Oh, well, thank you so much, Susan, for joining us today. I've honestly been really looking forward to it. Um, we had the privilege of meeting each other, and you did a book reading then, and you were telling us about the work of raising a wild child. And so hopefully we'll talk about that in a moment throughout the next hour. But I think that what I wanted to set the scene with today was when I was reading your book, there is a part at the beginning called Our Journey Together. And like us meeting families for the first time, you talk about that you meet them for the first time when they've reached breaking point. And that's exactly the moment that we meet most of our parent carers in our network at PDA Support Lancs. And in the exact way that you describe it, many of the families have children who are displaying extreme anxiousness. They've stopped eating, they can't go to school, they're having trouble with school, they're reaching burnout, extreme meltdowns, and you just feel so lost. And reading your book, it's like a hug, a written hug, and I wanted to thank you for that. So I think that was a good way of introducing you, Susan, because you wrote about that place and about the children that we're raising, and you've got that lived experience. And so I thought no better than to introduce you at that moment and just to say a huge thank you for joining us today. So over to you, Susan.
Lovely. No, thank you so much. It means so much to me when I hear which parts of the book, because I write that book, and as many of us will be familiar with, my short-term memory is awful. So I sometimes go back and reread it and go, oh, this is interesting. So it's really lovely. Thank you for sharing the part that resonated most. And absolutely, that the whole book, the whole Raising a Wild Child, it was born of that moment of seeing parent after parent spiraling. And because everything is so contradictory, the more they did, the more they spiraled. So they do more, and then it gets worse. And so, yeah, I think that's something many will recognise.
Yeah. So should we start off then with talking about, because you yourself describe you were diagnosed at the age of 40, you're autistic ADHD PDA, so late diagnosis, and then basically your experience of growing up and what that felt like really, and what that's made you today into the successful businesswoman you are today. Because I think as a parent, we're all worrying about what is going to happen to our children. How on earth are they going to have an independent life and work and do all of these things that as parents we want our children to do? And I think who better to ask than you?
Thank you so much. I've got so many reels going off in my head now about the so my own journey. It's interesting, if you met me now and people just make presumptions. I talk well, I speak well, I'm articulate, I seem to be doing a good job, and it's quite interesting when people say, I just want can you do therapy for my young person? I say, look, if we just chat, just my very existence as an adult, once they know my story in itself is the healing part. It's the knowing that you can get to the other side. And so my own journey is, much as people like to pretend this is all a very new thing that we're all experiencing with PDA and ADHD and autistic diagnosis going up. I was 11 years old. It must have been the first year of secondary school was the first time I just thought, I can't do this anymore. There's a few examples of like my history suddenly making sense, or I'm going to bounce all over the place. But yeah, my own history is at 11, I'd stopped really going to school. I just walked out one day and just thought, I'm tired. The only word I can use is I was absolutely exhausted. And I remember going home that day and having, I think, one of the biggest meltdowns, and people go, what's wrong? What's happened? You've been bullied. And I don't think things were ever the same after that. I never really went back to school after that. And kind of muddled through life until I was around 23, 24. By then I had 3 young children. I'd left home at 18, 19, and just kind of muddled my way through life. And then having my own children, then I got to about 30 and I thought, okay, I need to provide for them. I needed a job. And so I went back and did some GCSEs, and I also studied child development and did my teaching qualification. And I thought, hang on, this isn't how I developed or how my children developed. And suddenly lots of things started making sense. And And I did go into teaching thinking I could change things from the inside, and just found one of the things I kept repeating, I found at the end of every training, is the greatest reasonable adjustment is a shift in mindset. It's free, it doesn't need money, it doesn't need anything. It's just, how are we viewing these young people who do not see themselves as children? And I lasted about 10 years. And interestingly, when I look back, I don't think I completed a full year in school as a teacher, let alone as a child. There was a lot of illness, a lot of going off quite sick. But I muddled my way through the ranks. And by the end, I was working largely with PDAs. And what I noticed was, without whole family support, without taking that whole family, number one, because we all know how much undiagnosed need there is within parents and families. And number two, unless we are holding that whole family and just recognizing that everybody's struggling here, all the advice isn't working, it's actually making things worse, and being able to hold that family, there's no way of moving forward. And it isn't just, and one of our philosophies, especially early on, was we refuse to work just with the child. We're not being another place where someone hands over a child and says, fix them. And it's about the environment around them. And that's where it really was all born. And then, so Raising a Wild Child was born one day about 6 months after I'd left school. I left teaching, education. I was a Senko by the end. I was a head of ARPS and exclusion units by the end. And people would say, what's the magic formula? How do you turn this around within 6 weeks? I mean, my first day I was stabbed. 6 weeks later, this child's moving his picture from my anxiety from I'm fine to my anxiety's rising. I said, do you know what? I like them. I trust them and I like them. That really is when people say, what is that magic formula? I still make mistakes. I still say things wrong. I still do things wrong. I can't possibly always be on the ball, but they know underneath that all, we're muddling through together, and I am trying my best not to do the things. And yeah, and then I left school on a thing. Someone came to me, they had a child who was struggling. I was told it wasn't our remit to help. And in pure ND fashion, I went, fine, I resign. Went out, set up Raising a Wild Child. And I was struggling with the name. And then one day I just thought, I'm still institutionalized. And actually, it was almost reclaiming the word wild. My last Ofsted inspector had called the children in my class feral. And I had said, no, they're just born free. They're just wild and they're born free. After doing the work for about 6 months, and there were so many people that would come, and it was the whole mind shift change. And then one day I got up, started a Facebook group called Raising a Wild Child, because I thought, if you don't like the name, you're certainly not going to like anything I say after that. And it proved a natural filter of people. There are still people that go, I'm not sure, and then you explain it and then they come on board. But it's gone from strength to strength, and it is evidence that there is a way of creating something. So I can talk about my working patterns, and so when parents will say to me, but no, you can't be like my child's exhausted. And I say, well, do you know what? It's taken me 47 years by that point. It's 52 now, but to go, okay, what's my ebb and flow? How do I function? How can I? And I know that between Zooms, I lie on the floor for an hour, and that's okay. There's ways and the tricks that we play on our brains, and it's all okay. All these strategies that we can actually use, knowing that we're just trying our best, and if we can get it right 80% of the time, we can hold down jobs and we can do very, very well. And for a lot of the young people, they kind of come and they hear me, and I never talk directly. I'm usually just relaying my experience to a parent or something, and a young person will go, well, okay, my parents paying her some money, so she's got a job. What she's saying sounds resonant. I might be okay. And it seems to be one of the most powerful shifts that we have in our work with young people.
I think there's just so much that you've said in there that we could spend all day just unpacking that in itself, isn't it? And I think it's interesting that, you know, you were a teacher in a Senko and you realise that that way of teaching just wasn't working for a lot of the children, and that's a lot of the children that we have in our group. And we're always asked we have a private Facebook group, and we're always asked, what school is best for a PDA? And who can you recommend? I don't think there is actually a school that can cope with a PDA child, if I'm honest with you. What's your view on that?
When I first started raising a wild child, and we're converting to the wild ways, or kind of, I mean, under one umbrella, but we'll kind of just so that it doesn't confuse things, but they're the same. And when I first started raising a wild child, I really thought I would have to lobby governments and get laws changed and things changed. And what I did realize is everything that we need to create an education system for our young people that works already exists in law. The flexi schooling rule already exists in law. The meeting children where they're at, this all already exists. But there's, even within the most allied schools, there's a real reluctance. They're so terrified of what they perceive will become chaos that and my biggest thing is, one of the biggest arguments I had with one of the local authorities when we were doing this work, we would get children settled, families settled, everyone's ready, and I'd go, oh, and they go, oh, the child's ready for education, and the LA would go, so they're ready for school? I go, no, education. And they go, school? I go, no, education. And she started drawing the school with her hands. I'm going, some of them might want to be in a building. That might be. I've got a couple of PDAs. They've been out of school for 5 years. They wanted to go back, and we'll facilitate that. I don't rule anything out, because it's PDA, and it's just about understanding and creating. So when I ran ARPS, my PDAs, I just ran. It's so simple, but it's not easy because people just don't want to trust their young people. I just ran a mirrored curriculum and created as much choice within it as possible. So it's, you do need to come in today, but you can either you can land in the OT room, or you can land here. We are at some point going to do this project today. Where do you want to do it? And how do you want to do it? And there is a way. And actually, all the systems are in place to create it. Number one, it shouldn't be the only way. That's the other thing, that whole idea. You know, I've moved away from saying the world isn't created for us. The world was absolutely created for our mindset. It was created for our free thinking, for our learning with our hands, learning when things are useful. It was created. The thing with PDA, we talk about its giftedness and its ability to change the world. I call us the perpetually disappointed. And that's because we do not see the world how it is. We see it how it could and should be. And in a dream world, we would just be hyper-focused on making everything better, okay? And all this destruction you leave in, but what happens is you go, oh, someone's a bit upset, someone's a bit angry, so you have to all take that into account. And we used to live in a world where you could find your own path. But what we did was narrow it all. We created classrooms. We said there's one way of learning. We decided what should be learnt. We've decided humans are like computers. You have to input all the knowledge, hoping that they can access it at some point in future. But it doesn't have to be that way. And so, do I believe there's a school that can currently hold PDAs? No. Do I think it's absolutely doable with no change of legislation, yes.
Yeah.
But the mindset shift, it's what do you believe about young people and humans?
And I think that leads us on to one of the questions, really, or one of the themes, really, is that a lot of the work that you provide and the services you provide for families is alternative provision through AOTAS. I know that when my son had an AOTAS package, We used yourself with a mentor, and my son was very much wanting to go to college at the time. He'd had 3 years out of school. He was in burnout, recovering from burnout, and then he decided he wanted to get his GCSEs and go to college. And so we used a mentor to help him get through that process. But not every child is very different, aren't they? Some are not academic, and I mean, he absolutely hates the structure of him having to prove himself to get a GCSE. He hates that, but he kind of did it because he knew he wanted to go to college. College isn't going so well either because he hates having to prove that he knows something, and it just takes, as you say, it takes all of that imagination and freedom away because you're having to work towards a system. So a lot of us are now at a situation where we're having to look for alternative provision and AOTAS. So I know somebody is online, Fiona, who's just at that position now of looking at what on earth can you do as part of an AOTAS package, and how can you get your child back and get them learning and enjoying life and learning again.
I mean, I think absolutely. I think there's a few things, and you'll read them as kind of pages in the book of, remember you're parenting the child of today, not the adult of tomorrow. Mm. And your single job as a parent is to love them. Yeah. If we can hold those two things and know what's become clearer and clearer is the demographic that we serve that's underserved. It's a demographic of very often highly intelligent young people whose academic ability is the least of our concerns, and their attainment is the least of our concerns, because academic achievement and success by whatever markers follows mental health far more often than mental health follows any type of markers of achievement or success. So if we remember that firstly, our single job is to make sure they are fed and watered and that we love them. It's not our job to educate them, not our job to make sure they don't miss opportunities, not our job to make sure they don't alienate themselves from friends, not our job to make sure they have friends. None of that is our responsibility. We're there to, especially not there to protect them from their own feelings. And the thing with PDA is we are the perpetually disappointed. We are at one with that. We know we are always going to be, I call us the perpetually discontent. We're always going to be looking for something different. Everything comes at an opportunity cost. Everything we are doing means there's something we're not doing, and then we get paralyzed and don't do either. And we're already battling that. We're sort of at one with our emotions. Where it becomes paralyzing is where our emotions impact others, and then I start thinking I can't be sad or angry or tired without it worrying you, and then I get frustrated with you because now I feel guilty on top of everything else, and we've got this thing going on between us. And so I liken it to, when we like watching films, and we all go back to watching films, and films, they make us cry, they make us happy, they make us sad. We get frustrated with the writer, we get frustrated with the characters. But what draws us back is that experience of watching a film. And now imagine someone's next to you and you're watching your favorite film and your eyes well up saying, oh, why do you always watch this? It always makes you cry. Stop, like, you shouldn't do this. And that trying to protect from any sadness or disappointment is one of the biggest factors I find. And the missed opportunity, parents get terrified, the college place it's going, that exam it's going. Honestly, we're going to be working for 100 years, right? It's the work, it's all there in the future. So the first thing is to remember is the lean back and make sure that they genuinely have the time and space to heal, and you have some respite. So it just gives everybody a break from trying to make things better for a while. That's the first key. Is we do a lot of work with the polyvagal. It's very clear when someone is on the way down in the anxiety cycle, and then on the way out, on the way down, the frustration, the irritation, the anger at themselves and others is very clear. And then they hit a space where they just need rest. They hit the bottom of the polyvagal curve. On the way up, what we do is train parents to see the signs. They can look like the ones that are on the way down, like the irritation and the impatience. I want a school, I want it now. Give me the school now. I've decided I want to be an engineer. I need to learn it all right this second. And helping parents through observing that. So it's, I mean, the first thing is, sorry, I keep going off on tangents. We often get told, what are the strategies? And I go, I don't know the child. Okay. I don't know the situation. We have what I call a systematic way of creating bespoke solutions. But I'm not going to sit here and say, this is what works for PDAs, because as you know, there is different from each other and from themselves half the time as well. So the first thing is figuring out where they are on that journey of healing, of actually genuinely being able to make choices from a place that isn't out of fear. It isn't out of, oh, I'm getting left behind, I'm disappointing someone, I'm doing something wrong. So your first thing is working out where that child is, working out what they need right now. So you're parenting that child of today. And then once we know they're on the way up, it's almost pacing that curiosity. It's very tempting when parents have had a child that's been in their, I mean, I've had a child that was in their room for like 3 years and one day woke up and went, right, I want to go to school right now. And so what can be tempting is we all go into, oh my God, he wants school. Let's speak to so-and-so. Let's speak to so-and-so. Let's speak to, and a lot of our job is holding parents to go, no, breathe. We can't, every solution you give a PDA takes it off the table for them, because they have to feel like it comes from them. They have to feel like they're taking ownership and it's their autonomy. And so at that point, the only question is, okay, so what you're thinking? I don't know. What kind of school? I don't know. You're going to get, I don't know, for a very, very long time. And we are so tempted to fill the gaps as adults. But it's very, very important to remember, if you put that on the table, all you're doing is taking it off the table for your child or delaying them ever seeing that as a thing, because the minute they think it's somebody else's idea, we don't want it. And so it's walking with them. And that's something that we say a lot at the Wild Heart Foundation. That's fundamentally what we do, is we meet your child where they're at and we walk with them. Oh, I want to go to school. Okay, what are you thinking? What were you thinking yesterday? I don't know. Okay, you come back to it. And asking a child, even though they say, I don't know, it wakes up the part of the brain that just says, what do I need? What do I need? What do I need? Not what's expected, not what should I do, not what is that person expecting from me, not what exists out there. And sometimes they'll get, so we had this conversation with 2 young lads and they went, well, we just want to learn football, everything through football. We just want to learn football. So through football, we managed to teach them angles. On rainy days, they sat down and created pitches and games. We taught them maths. We taught them everything through football. And a bit of cooking and a bit of Wagamama's too, because after football, they'd go play football. But on rainy days, they would go to coffee shops with a budget, or after football, they'd go to Wagamama's and they had a budget, and then they found some dishes they wanted to recreate. And so they had to use that budget to either spend on the food there or go buy ingredients. And it's all relationship building. It was all completely built on relationship. And both those boys are now back in school, and one of them's sitting GCSEs a year early. Even by the markers of the system, we can create success by letting our children lead. It's not an either or. A big frustration for me is people thinking it has to be either educational attainment, success, or mental health. No, it's and if you've noticed it with your own child, we had a young girl who wasn't interested in anything. Then one day she came to me and she said, I found the degree I want to do, but I need these A-levels. I mean, it's cool. We've got the tutors. All you need is find out the exam board. Academic capability is the least of our concerns. It's the easiest thing to pass an exam. And once it's come from them, all it needs is 6 months with a good revision guide and an intuitive tutor, a mentor. And our mentors work in different ways. Sometimes it's about getting on the screen and going, right. So when I used to mentor some child, I had a young person that they'd come on for the first 2 minutes. They would set me a challenge. I would set them a challenge. We'd go off, we'd regroup in half an hour and feedback what we'd learned in our challenge. And there's others that want to work purely by email. Just send me questions and the young person will respond and get corrected, and they would to and fro on email. There's always a way. And it's that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that in order to get to that point where the children or the young people themselves say, I want to do this, I think you have to go through such a lot before getting there, don't you? I think that, as we said at the beginning, a lot of families will come to you, will join our group in absolute desperation when they're at breaking point and their children are in crisis, and they're not in a place to do any form of education at all. They need a huge period of just unschooling and rest, don't they? And that can look different for every child. It could be years, couldn't it? And at that time, then you as a parent are grieving. You go through grief because you are grieving for a child that you thought you had, a life that you thought you had, or your child was going to have, and you don't. You then are panicked because they're now at school, and you're like, oh my gosh, they're not going to get any qualifications, and you just go through all of this emotion, and then it's basically like you have to kind of untrain your own mind about how you were brought up, the expectations of like what you do, you go to school, you go to college, you go to university, you get a job and all of that. And it's just completely flipping it on its head, isn't it? And looking at things through a completely different lens. And that's quite often the panic that we get with parents that first start our group, in that, well, they've got to go to school. And it's like, I now say, well, they don't. And the look of horror of,
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, my child has got to go to school, because how will they get a job, and how will they do this, and how will they do that? And it is that different way of thinking. And then when your child is recovering from burnout, it's not linear, is it, like you say? So it might be that you, on that way back up again in the recovery, it's very kind of up and down, up and down, up and down, and they give you glimpses. And you talk about this in your book about, and certainly we've all experienced it with children in burnout, you'll see glimpses of them coming out of burnout, and you're like, oh my gosh, and then you'll get a step back.
Yeah.
and constantly, and during all of that, then you end up as a parent with post-traumatic stress.
Absolutely.
You really do. And you're then dealing with that. A lot of parents have to give up their job, and so you're dealing with all of that. But then you find somebody like yourself and your company who can actually teach you a different way in which your children can engage in life again. And I think that, and as soon as you find people that get it, like you do when you join a support group, you found your tribe, you're around the people that get it, that's when I think that you can start recovering as a parent and actually realising there is something out there for your child. Things will get better, but it has to be done in a different way.
Absolutely. And completely every word true. I mean, one of our things is trust the process. And I've had parents pick up the phone to me and go, oh, your process, like this is, and there are times, especially early on, when I'd be holding on thinking, what if this time it doesn't work? What if this time I'm wrong and they should be doing more? And it's never not worked. It just takes different amounts of time. And I see our job entirely as holding, I always say our job is to have our hands firmly on the parents' backs against the avalanche of conflicting and advice that doesn't work being thrown at them by lots of professionals, by TikTok, by everyone that's telling you all these things and everything you should be doing. And our job is to help the parents heal. And the magic of that is, if we focus, and we do some, we've got Emma, who's incredible. She does a tapping for the PTSD. We recognize the PTSD. The first question we ask parents when they come and they say they have to go to school, I say, what are the parameters of your life? What am I working with here? Are you able, say tomorrow they couldn't go to school, is there something that you can do to facilitate that? If they go, absolutely not, then I say, well, the conversation is about honesty and transparency. Where I think a lot of these parenting advice fails, this idea that you have to be consistent, or you just have to be transparent and reasonable. And I say, well, this conversation you have with your child now is, you validate, I can see you're trying really hard to get to school, and I know it's getting harder every day. At the moment, at the moment, I really still have to work. I haven't got the bits in place. If you can just give me some time or give me some ideas of how I can help you while I try and get something in place to make it okay for you to stay at home. And if you can't, we'll deal with that. But just going and walking that journey with them and going, right now, I know it's not ideal. I'm trying to do some stuff. I'm more than happy to get your input. Give me some ideas. How can I make it easier? I can't keep you at home on your own. That doesn't feel safe. And just having that conversation. And when parents go, I absolutely, number one, there's two things. There's they have to go to school. My question is why? And when you drill down, and I'm very annoying when I drill down, and it's just, and when you drill down, you realize that our anxiety as parents is we think if today they don't go to school, in the future, they're going to be homeless and starved to death. That's actually the anxiety that's at play there, which is why you're so terrified, which is natural, which is normal. That's what our amygdala does when it wakes up. There's no safety rail. You're on a cliff edge. You're either going to fall off or you're not. And so the first thing is going and helping parents break that link and going, we actually live in a society where we don't have a homeless, we have a mental health crisis. It's not a resource issue. It's people, and the outcome you're most afraid of is far more likely if we don't fix the mental health, not the academics, because we have a system that thankfully still very few people will starve to death or die on the street. And usually that's, if they're there, it's because of mental health. There's someone that's going to feed them. They're going to have a roof over their head. And it's not up to us to decide the quality of the food or the roof. It's up to us to help them know the quality of the food and the roof that they want and work on that. And so a huge part of what we do is, I always say, we don't teach parents anything. We literally help you have confidence and trust in what your instincts are telling you, and let you go back to being the parent that you dreamt of, which is simply to love and accept your child unconditionally, which is what you want to do. But all this conflicting advice of what you should do and what that should look like.
Honestly, I think what you're saying is so true. But I think as parents, what we face is trying to get the local authority to understand that, because we get to the point where our children can't go to school. We need them to be doing something, and it's because our children want to, and we're desperately looking at ways in which we can do things. And so we will find somewhere like yourself that can provide this alternative provision, and they'll turn around and say that's not education. And so we're constantly battling. You know, we all try to apply for personal budgets. We get rejected because they say that's not education. And what they're not understanding is that our children need to be doing something that's interest-led, that they want to do, because otherwise they're not going to do anything. It has to come from them. And so what would you say to help parents who are in this position now, who are applying for budgets, who can't get a YOTAS, and what can they do?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So our mentors, sometimes if the child can't engage, our entire job is to sit with the parent and go, just tell me what they did do. Right. Many of us are early years trained in our demographic, and the team that we all work with. There's very little that you can't link to a curriculum. So that's the first thing, right? And the second is a flippant narrative with the local authorities. I find so the first thing I always say is, the minute that you think your child looks like they might end up missing school, what we work with is, so that's the systematic approach, is how do we reduce anxiety and stress every morning? And the first thing I do is you call the attendance officer yourself. Attendance officers hate it that schools use them as the bogeyman. You call the officer yourself and you go, just want to let you know, I'm really struggling. I can't see how much longer my child is going to be able to attend. And they'll go, why are you telling me? I go, can I just have it noted on record? I'm trying to work with the school. I am talking to doctors. I am trying my absolute best. I really want them there. But I just want you to know it's looking like it's getting more and more difficult. Can that be noted on file? Because then what happens when the schools say, well, attendance, we go, oh, attendance already know. And when they say education, we go, oh, mental health. And it's going, it's the hardest thing for parents is to go, yeah, you're right, help me. Because you're already being blamed, being told that you're not doing a good job. And we had this moment in tribunal where I was there as an advocate for one of the parents, and the school would go, they were going, you're right, I'm the professional, I should be able to get them back into school, I can't. Do you have any ideas? And well, the mum, I went, yeah, mum should. She should be able to say to her child, get up and go to school. She can't, it's just not working. She can't physically manhandle. And help me. You give me the solution. And then it got to the point where the head teacher and the Senko were going, well, we've got so-and-so who's quite bulky, and we've got then go around with a cab. And I went, hang on. Are you telling me you're going to send 2 grown men into a 7-year-old's bedroom to physically pull them out from under the bed, put them in the OT room, and want to call it education? You can't be saying that, because I'm not sure how that's education. And we won that tribunal and we got EOTAS. And it's also understanding that mental health is part of the education, part of the curriculum. A lot of the times we get approved funding through the PHSE curriculum. And so, yeah, mental health. What did they do today? Do you know when a child doesn't turn up for a Zoom that they're meant to turn up? I go, excellent, they've recognised. And I go, can you go back and tell that child, I'm really pleased they honoured their nervous system today, and that they're learning to use words to say, I can't make it today, instead of trying to make it or getting angry or distracting. Brilliant. We can link that to the curriculum. That is progress. And it's understanding that and knowing those conversations. And sometimes, like I said, children are happy to do a couple of things with parents, but not with mentors. And then our mentor's job is to talk to the parent. That time that for the tuition or whatever they've got funding for is we'll just go, what did they do? Okay, this is what's happening here. And just having ideas with the parents on how to link it to their standards to get them off their back, while at the same time helping parents understand how their child is progressing. So you're not battling both. You're not battling both thinking they're falling behind academically and not learning, and your own anxiety. And that's where we lie in going, right, there's loads of stuff they can tick off on the curriculum that is progress. We can do that, but here's how your child is progressing. And as long as we can show progress, and we can always show progress when we are healing and helping our children to heal, then that's what makes it that's the argument to have, that's the conversation to have, is not trying to prove by their standards, but going in with our standards of what we believe progress is. And we've got a couple of things that so when families come to us, we will track them on their polyvagal journey. And if you've seen in the book, the Children Tell Us scale. So in the book, I talk about how when people come to us, very often, 11-year-old me, the day before, probably didn't look that exhausted. And then one day it looks like it's out the blue. And we often, and so I always say, children tell us, first they use their words, I can't go to school. And we, oh no, but you love it once you're there, and come on. And they think, well, I do kind of like it when I'm there. And okay, maybe it's just today. And they go off to school. And then they tell us by delaying, oh, I can't find my socks, taking ages to eat breakfast, and no, I don't want those socks, I want these socks. So loads of delaying. So they're telling you, oh, come on, and they're still quite little then. You love it when you're there. You're fine when I leave. You pick them up and you take them. Then they tell us by holding onto the door frames, you're fine when I leave, and we take them in. And then physical ailments start, the headaches, the stomach aches. We go, come on. And then they tell us by hurting themselves or others. And then we listen. And so what we taught them is the quickest way to get this need met is hurting yourself or others. And so we track them, where are they on that scale? And our job is to peel back those layers and help them trust that if they tell us with their voice, we're going to start listening. And that's the strategy they can use. And And so those are the two tracks that we will go. This is where your child started. And it will pendulum, and then it will land, and then it will pendulum, and then it will land, and we track progress that way as well, as in proving that something is happening when it looks like nothing's happening. This is the biggest problem, is we're all programmed to fix. This whole strategy came about because I had 3 ADHD PDAs under the age of 4, and I spent an awful lot of time staring at them thinking, oh. and I'd find by me just staying there, trying to figure it out without speaking, without doing, without somehow it just passed a lot of the time. And that's really it. It's allowing, it's helping parents go against their intuition of jumping in and fixing. And it's the most selfless thing you can do, is overriding your own need as a parent to do something. Is to give them space and let it pan out, and getting the support for yourselves. It's so hard. There is no, one of the big things is, this isn't you're the adult, get over it. One of the big parts of our approach and our philosophy is a no blame, no shame. Everybody has needs. And I often give the example that if you were in a relationship as a peer with your child, you've each got your starting point. There's only so much you can come out of your starting point that before it starts hurting you. And so if one person can move 10%, another person can move 10% before the other, you've got this 80% vacuum. Now, if you're in a relationship with a peer, I would say that vacuum's huge. You're going to end up resenting each other. You're going to try counseling and this compromise and 50-50, but it's not going to work. Just lovingly let each other go. But when it's an adult and your child, firstly, only one person signed that contract, is the adult, not the child. But secondly, that vacuum still exists. So our role is to go, how can we fill the vacuum for the parent? Because traditionally we're used to our children moving towards us and filling the vacuum of need. But what we say is, okay, parent, what's your start point? Child, what's your start point? What is this vacuum? Child is going to heal. For a while, they'll be doing 0. How can we get the parents and hold the parents through the fear and anxiety of the months that it can take, and sometimes years, to get their child back? And that's where we come in.
I think that you've touched on a couple of things that come up quite often. One of them is that the trusted person is the person that the child wants to co-regulate with all the time, and they cannot bear not being with that person. And so we've got a couple of families at the moment where they just cannot leave their child. Their child's been in burnout for several years, actually, and their child or young person will say, you can't leave me because I'll hurt myself if you leave me. And that puts them under incredible pressure because they just feel they can't leave the house.
Yeah.
So that was one of the questions that came up, as to what can people do in that situation. And then the second one is the sibling dynamics that happen, that, like you mentioned, everybody has their own needs, don't they? Quite often you're living in a neurodivergent household, everybody has those different needs, and quite often, you know, there may be one child that's domineering that time from a parent, so, and they can start becoming quite aggressive and violent towards you as a trusted person. Yeah. or their other siblings. So it's, how do families deal with that? So that's two big questions. You know, obviously one is when you feel that the child cannot leave you and you cannot leave the house, and that is having an impact on your own mental health and well-being. And then the second one is, how do you deal with the sibling dynamic of living within a neurodivergent household?
Yeah, the positive is that there is a webinar for each of those, so if you contact them afterwards. But so the first one, to address the first one, is that's when we start talking about boundaries, right? But we've learned over the years that boundaries mean rules, and in reality, a boundary never was meant to try and to adapt somebody else's behavior. A boundary is to protect ourselves. And so it's supporting the parents, have the conversation with the child. The first thing with the PDA is in order for them to be able to open their mind when they're in high stress, we're quite reasonable and rational and kind and empathetic and everything else. But when we're in high stress, we can't see anybody else's needs. So the first step is to go, how can me setting a boundary around my time help the PDA, help the child? And the first thing is to go, my biggest fear is one day, if I carry on, I won't be able to be here for you. And so it's framing it as in how it helps them. And then it's helping the parent understand the conversations to be had. So for example, I'm going to hurt myself if you leave the house. It's going that I really don't want you to hurt yourself. I do have to leave the house because otherwise I'm going to be very unwell. And this is just trying to nutshell a massive topic, but there are lots of things that we can send you to help with. So here's the things, the safeguards I've put in place to make sure you're safe. So if you do end up, so if you've got a self-harmer, if you do end up hurting yourself, this is so-and-so is here. They're here to expect it. Just come down. They'll help you with the wound. Knowing you can control nothing. Knowing you cannot. If a child is going to hurt themselves, I promise you, until the day that they can come and ask for help, there's nothing you can do to stop it. You can hide all the blades. You can go in and hide the rocks. And I mean, I had a child who was traumatized because the doctor said, go in and take away everything sharp. And this child was traumatized because their personal space had been invaded. I walked in and saw at least 7 things they could still harm themselves with. Okay. So it's first going, I can't stop you. What I can do is make sure you're safe if it happens. And again, it would depend very much on the exact family, and that's where we talk more detail. But for example, it would be, I am going, here's the clock. Is number one, it's saying this is happening. The thing with our brain, we're always seeing where is that boundary. A big wake-up call for me was when my eldest daughter and my youngest daughter, my youngest was watching TV. My eldest daughter walked in and just changed the channel. And I said, how can you enjoy watching that? She was watching her show. She went, why would I be enjoying it? It's what I want to watch. And I went, but how can you enjoy it knowing now your sister isn't getting what she wants? And she went, but if she wanted it enough, she'll fight back. And it was a real wake-up call. And in time, I realized, and I've had this conversation, my daughter's now 27, and I've had this conversation about that moment. It's no reflection on how much they love. The thing is, society tells you that if you love someone, you compromise and you give up what you want. And we've got these societal rules going on, and we're made to feel ashamed for the fact that we are programmed to get the maximum out of everything, and we rely on others to push back, and we don't see that moment of conflict in the same way as the other person. That moment is not a reflection of how much I love or respect or want you in my world and life. It's really about the thing that we're discussing now, and whoever wants it most is the one that will get it. And what can happen, I say, if you're going to give into a PDA, you do it straight away. The worst thing you can do is go, oh, so the rules are you fight about it for a bit and then I still get it. And so it's deciding which hill you're going to die on. If leaving the house is it, that is the only battle we're fighting. Everything else is going out the window. That is the only battle we're fighting. And then over time, the child recognizes, oh, okay, and one day they'll just go, no more I can do here. I've tried everything. And they'll try unhelpful ways to get you to stay, and they'll scream and they'll take your phone and then all sorts of things. And then one day it will clock that this is one that isn't changing, and we support through that. And so, and it's also asking that. So this is what's going to happen. Mum's going to leave the house for 20 minutes today, or 10 minutes, or 5 minutes, or whatever is just slightly out of what she can currently do. How can I help you make that easier? I understand. So it's not no blame, no, but you have to let me in. It's not up to you, and you don't control me. It's literally, I understand this is going to be horrific for you. What we also must remember is we can lay boundaries around ourselves, but we don't have to be angry about it. We don't have to be upset with them. It's literally, I understand, and I'll go, oh no, isn't it awful that I really wish I didn't mind being on a remote control for you. It'd be really easy for both of us if I didn't mind about never leaving the house again and you wanted me to. I'm so sorry, that's not how it is. Isn't that annoying? Isn't it annoying that I want to have my own? I know. And just validating it. There's no, it's just accepting they just wish things were different. And that's okay. And they can be disappointed that they're not, and they can be angry that they're not, but it's not for us to change the boundary. You can't please us. You simply, there's nothing you can do that will ultimately get you what most parents want, is that ultimate contentment. We are the discontent because we are created to change the world. That's why we always seeing how things could be different. What more can we get? How can we? And so it's lovingly setting down what you are willing and able to do without hurting yourself. And there's a beautiful thing by Brené Brown that says freedom is contagious. And what you're teaching your child is you're allowed to express your needs, and other people's reaction is not the gauge of whether your need is right or wrong. The other person doesn't have to agree to respect what you want. And our children learn much more from watching us do that, because what surprises a lot of people is a lot of PDAs end up completely relinquishing entire control and end up in the hands of narcissist relationships and all sorts of abusive relationships, because if the only thing we can control is our control, we hand it over and we give in and we disassociate and we go, fine, you control me. And so it's very important. And that's the same with the siblings. So I brushed on that, but it's that setting, deciding which hill you're going to die on, then supporting your young person in how can I help you? Is it a timer? Is it having me on the end of the phone just this once where I walk up to the top of the road and finding a strategy together? With siblings, again, it's the same message. Other people's reaction is not the gauge of whether your need is valid. And so what you'll find is a lot of siblings start being very appeasing. And our job is to go, no, did you want to say yes or no? But they'll give, it doesn't matter if they're cross. They're allowed to be cross and you're allowed to say no. They're allowed to get angry and you're allowed to say no. And if there are moments where you know that the PDA child's behaviour has meant they ruin the enjoyment for the sibling, it's lots and lots of pre-work. We do letters of when one of us in the room, we don't say when the PDA is angry and hitting everyone, when one of us in the room is dysregulated, what's everybody else's role? So your role is to go to your room, my role is to do this, and depending on where everyone at, some people can stay in the room and be lovingly present, and sometimes that's not the kindest thing because they're dysregulated and they need to leave, but they would have all pre-agreed it. So what happens in the moment doesn't matter. Everyone's on high edge and saying things they don't mean, but you've all pre-agreed it and you can all come back to the agreement and understand why it happened. And say, for example, the sibling ends up missing out on lunch with mum or the movie that they were watching with dad or whatever they were doing. It's knowing and training that sibling that they're going to come back and we're going to have a conversation and to say, we know you were really looking forward to having lunch with just dad today. Right, let's put it in the diary when you're going to go out with dad and have lunch, or what is it that could help feel like it's balanced that out a bit, because thank you for doing what you needed to do when your sibling wasn't feeling okay. But now, how do we make it up to you? Sometimes it's a movie in bed while the other parent, we've had times when the child that lost on the movie with mum, they got to watch it in bed, and the other parent's job was completely and utterly to just go and co-regulate or just keep the other child away for a while in one way, shape or form, in the kindest way possible. And so it's having those balancing conversations and making sure the sibling knows they're not responsible. And there's also a fine balance with siblings. You use this strategy and then they start going, oh, okay, so if I prod them, they scream, I get something. And you have those conversations about rights and responsibilities and all of that, and there's a lot of pre-work that goes into it. But if I would say the biggest thing to teach siblings is we will make it up to you somehow, validate it, speak about it. We think if we say things, that's the only time that child will notice. We try not to point out that we notice that they're sacrificing, because we think maybe they haven't noticed. But go and talk to those siblings going, I see every day how much you keep the peace. I see you. And I want you to know I'm noticing. And so you're healing both at the same time. And the other thing is, we worry that if we state things or validate emotions, it means we need to change something or act. Saying, I know you can't go to school, I just need a couple more days or a couple more weeks to try and put something in place, is fine. It's validating the emotions that's healing. What we want to know is, you know, that I had a young boy who fighting the world, and then and I just said to him, God, it must be so frustrating when your own brain is working against you and won't let your feet move. And you just saw this child just melt, just kind of go, okay, they know I'm not deliberately doing this. And there's nothing you can say to a PDA in those moments. They're not already screaming in their own head. There's nothing that we're not going, but you wanted to go. What do you mean? What do you mean feet you're not moving? You wanted to leave. I mean, I remember when Crystal Mays first came back to the UK, I had a friend who got some priority tickets that were worth hundreds. And I'm standing at the door with my door on the hand, and my hand won't turn the handle. And I was in a ball crying, and I couldn't go. And there's nothing that, and I mean, in my head, I'm going, you like these people, you wanted to do this, but if my feet won't move, my feet won't move.
And that is so true for many of our children. It's a can't, not won't, isn't it? Absolutely. Yeah. And also going on what you said about in the moment, when you're in the moment of dealing with a meltdown or overwhelm, everybody is on edge, aren't they? You just often don't know what to do for the best. And I think, as you say, to then reflect on it afterwards, and for everybody within the household to have that role and to know what to do in that time is really good advice, because in the moment you can't think straight.
And you're going to make mistakes and say things you shouldn't. I do it. Everyone does it, because when you're in your anxiety mode, you're all in your child mode. Yeah. The healing is what happens before and after. Is it, I'm sorry I shouted, but you wouldn't, there's no but. I'm sorry I shouted, you were struggling.
Yeah, and the one thing that I can't remember who gave me this piece of knowledge, but it's been brilliant. When I knew that my son was really struggling and he couldn't talk, or I just go upstairs and go, I can see that you're really struggling right now, and I'll be downstairs if you want me. And I just remember the look on his face one time when I said that. It was almost like, oh my gosh, you understand how I'm feeling. And quite often then, after me doing that, he would come downstairs and he'd say he was sorry. And he would actually be embarrassed about it all as well. And because I'd validated the feelings in that moment, and that's the really important thing, isn't it? It's about validating.
Absolutely. And it is remembering, there's a few, like, for me, and I think for lots of fellow PDAs I've spoken to, our greatest desire isn't to be loved, it's to be understood and accepted. So if we're thinking in the moment, what can we do? It's thinking, not how can I make them feel loved? It's how can I make them feel understood and accepted? And exactly as you've just said, one of the big pieces of advice we give is, when you're not sure what your child's feeling, we are programmed as humans that when we are feeling something that we don't understand or can't articulate, we try and create that feeling in those that we trust, because we want the empathy. And so when they're saying, you're just stupid, what they're saying is, I feel stupid. When they're saying, you're nobody, that you, I know, when they're trying to humiliate, is thinking, what are they making me feel? Actually, that's how they feel. That's the interpreter for you. That's your clue as to how they're feeling and what you need to validate. And sometimes it's really hard, because sometimes I've been called every name under the sun, and I want to, but if you get it right 80% of the time, and then the 20% that you don't, it's all about the healing and the reflection. I had this thing with my stepson once when I really wanted a haircut. We'd done everything perfectly, and we'd got to the door and he couldn't walk in, and I know they were closing, and suddenly every strategy I've ever talked about went out the window, and I'm going, I'm going to take your dinosaurs. And then later on when we're talking, I went, I threatened your dinosaurs. What was I thinking? He goes, oh, you were thinking like a child, weren't you? I went, yeah, I'm threatening your dinosaurs when it's your head and your haircut. What was I thinking? And we laugh about it and we hug it out and we go, okay, maybe next time we'll do it differently, and maybe we won't. But the healing is being able to go back and go, yeah. I mean, and when I run out of natural consequences, I will say things. I'm trying to get as many snippets in as possible. Everything with natural consequences, you all know, you've had those conversations. When I run out of natural consequences, I will say, please don't put me in this position where I'm going to say something stupid like, you can't go to football on Saturday, because it's nothing to do with this situation, but I'm running out of tools here, right? Yeah. Can you help me out? And once you've done these strategies, they can be quite, in the beginning, it can feel quite static, but over time you can start joking about them. And I will say, please don't make me adult. I hate adulting. It's boring. You hate it. I hate it. I will do it if I have to. Please don't make me say silly things like, you can choose to put your socks on and then you can have that, or you can, please don't make me do it. And sometimes I end up having to do it, and sometimes we laugh it out and we figure it out together. Life is too important to be taken seriously. It's that snippet.
Absolutely. And I think that's why humour also really does help de-escalate things, doesn't it, often? That is a piece of advice we're often saying, try humour, and it does actually work. But also, I think it was Chrissy Forbes that maybe I got this one from, was actually just acknowledging when you get it wrong and just saying, look, I'm sorry, I got that wrong. I'm really sorry. I can see that wasn't right for you. And just, again, it's just, that makes somebody feel so much better when you're apologising.
Absolutely. We've got if you look at the de-escalation, there's a few of those strategies that immediately can de-escalate a situation. But I find it very, very interesting how one of the biggest complaints we have about our PDAs is they will never admit they're wrong. And then I go, when was the last time you told them you got it wrong? They learn from watching us. We do not learn. The reason I was a terrible teacher as an imparter of knowledge, because I could get children to sit down. I can't make people learn. I've never understood that. I didn't know that neurotypicals could find something boring, read it and learn from it. That is so alien to me. It just won't go in. And what I've always known intuitively, they learn by watching us, not by what we tell and say to them. But I told them that I loved them. I told them that this doesn't matter. What did your actions say? And what do your actions say consistently? And that's where they're picking up their cues.
Thank you so much. And again, just thank you for your time. It's been really great.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for liking the book. It's my little baby that.
Oh, it's amazing.
I'm a bit protective over, so thank you.
It's really good. Thank you.
No problem at all.